You are watching Divorce Shield Live, the weekly show just for men that are thinking about or going through a divorce. Today we're going to dive into custody. What a great topic. And we're going to learn all the mistakes you guys are making and how we can fix those mistakes so you can get better outcomes. Welcome back to the show. My name is John Knocklinger, the men's divorce coach and mentor. I'm a recovering divorce attorney and the founder and head coach of Divorce Shield, the only company exclusively devoted to training men how to plan for and navigate divorce. You can find out more about us and join our men's divorce support community for free at thedivorceshield.com. Today, my guests are Adelola, Sherilyn Dow, and Stephanie Hunnell. They are both kick-ass divorce attorneys and the co-host of the Undoing I Do with Stephanie and Ade Facebook and YouTube series. We'll put a link on this page so you can go find the show. They do it every Thursday night at 6 p.m. and they are incredible. I've listened to several of their shows. They just have so much great advice, no matter where you live. And Ade is an attorney in Staten Island, New York. We will not hold that against her. And Stephanie is an attorney in Asbury Park, New Jersey. Welcome to the show, ladies.
Thank you, John. Thank you for inviting us on.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you guys on. But before we dive into custody and trying to tell guys a little something about what they can do to help themselves out a little bit, I want to start it back at the beginning. Ade, why did you end up being a family law attorney?
I'm going to tell you, I never wanted to practice matrimonial law because my parents were divorced. And I knew at 9 that I wanted to be a lawyer. I thought I was going to do real estate law. I have a passion for real estate and still do. But I stumbled upon a clerkship with Judge Paul A. Capalco, may he rest in peace, in Monmouth County. And I got bitten by the family law bug, loved the drama of it all. And so just stayed with it, built my practice, tried to do something different. I was deputy counsel to the city council of New York City, was writing legislative service every day. And I was like, yeah, let me go back to the courtroom, and started my own practice from there. Family law is really my jam. It's what I love to do. And I'm glad that I fell upon that clerkship so many years ago. I'm not going to mention how many years ago now, because I'm not going to dig this out.
You don't look old enough for it to have been that many years ago.
Well, thank you. Yes.
So you like
black don't crack. So there we go.
So you like doing real estate?
Yeah, I love real estate. I was a real estate broker prior to going to law school, and dabble in some real estate investment now. So yeah, that's actually my side time passion.
You didn't want to be a real estate attorney?
That's boring. That's boring. Shuffling papers back and forth. Oh, there's a lien on your property. Oh, we got nah, that wasn't for me.
Yeah, well, what about you, Stephanie?
So I like that you said you're a recovering divorce lawyer, because I feel like a lot of divorce lawyers that I speak to did not end up, that was not their first choice. So much like Ade, it was not my first choice either. I did know that I wanted to be a lawyer when I was really young, and my stepmother encouraged me to be a lawyer because she said I know how to argue really well when I was like 10 or 12 years old. But I actually wanted to do maritime law, which is like completely unrelated to divorce at all. I took international law classes in law school. I did, maritime moot court. It was amazing. That's what I wanted to do. But I couldn't get a job when I got out of law school. I sent out over 100 resumes to judges, to law firms. Maritime is such a niche practice area. Unless you know somebody, it was very difficult to get in. So I ended up getting a clerkship with Judge Millard in Ocean County. He at the time was in Burlington County, and he was promised me that he was going into criminal, because I had no desire at all to be in family. Absolutely was like the worst thing I wanted to do in my life. And I loved it. So he actually stayed in family the entire time. I saw how much I can litigate. I saw how much I can help people. And there's so many different facets of family law that I just, again, I love it. And I've been doing it for 16 plus years now.
I hear that from a lot of divorce attorneys that really like it, that it sort of goes into so many different areas, bankruptcy and all kinds of interesting things.
Absolutely.
You made a comment about the recovering divorce attorney part of how I introduced myself, and I say that because I'm still a little involved in the law. I do mediation a lot now, but I cannot deal with the litigation part of the practice anymore, because it's really gotten to the point where the attorneys in large part are just as bad as the litigants now. And you get to the point where you don't want to every night just be so stressed out that you dread the next day, and you dread getting letters, and you dread the phone calls. And it just, we all have to do what makes us happy, and certainly what doesn't drain the life out of us.
Right.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. It's hard dealing with whacked out litigants. But now when you say that you have crazy ass attorneys on the other side, I mean, people that really think that these are their cases, and that gets to be very dangerous. It's extremely dangerous to hire somebody who's so personally involved in your case that they'll be riding down your spouse's street, putting, wiretaps on their cars and stuff. I mean, that's out there, and it's happened because there's crazy people. Try not to hire those people.
Yeah, and anyone who's watching or listening to this, it's important that you hear this background from the attorneys that will represent you in a divorce, because it may seem like this attorney you're going to is this sort of neutral, above it all. We all have an image of attorneys, but a lot of divorce really impacts attorneys, and attorneys get really stressed out. And I don't want you to feel sorry for an attorney that you're, paying hundreds of dollars an hour to, but just keep that in mind, that sometimes there is a lot going on behind the scenes. So I already told you a little bit about what I don't like about being a family law attorney. So Stephanie, why don't you tell me a little bit of what you like and what you really don't like about being a family law attorney.
So kind of dovetailing to what we were already talking about, what drives me crazy is when we have a litigation that ends up becoming so expensive for a client because the attorney has taken a personal approach to the litigation, where they're not properly advising their clients because maybe they walked in the door and they wanted to get this client. So they fed them the story that they're going to get, the sun, the moon, and the stars, when in reality, that was not even close to what they were going to get. But, it got them in the door, it got them the retainer, and it's unfortunate that it happens all the time. And then, of course, that costs the other client a lot of money. And also, by the way, it erodes trust in your relationship with your client, because they're going forward with something, just for one example, like splitting, a pension, a marital pension. So that's pretty straightforward in the state of New Jersey. You're going to split it from the date of marriage to the date of the divorce complaint. Pretty standard stuff. Then you have somebody who's fighting that distribution and then like screaming at you that you're crazy and, ending up costing a lot of money. That drives me crazy. I wish people would just give a straightforward answer. This is what you can expect. If you don't like it, I'm sorry. You can go, someplace else. But I would be doing you a disservice if I let you believe that. So that drives me. That drives me crazy.
The setting expectations game is something that so many attorneys are horrible at. Either they do it, what you were just talking about, they lie to their clients or mislead them from the beginning, or they just don't really know what they're doing well enough to be able to advise them and tell them what to expect. And either way, it can get really bad. Then you have that whole situation of the client saying, "You're not fighting for me," and all this stuff.
Oh my gosh.
Because I can't get you what you want because I didn't set the expectations correctly at the beginning. What about you, Dave?
Oh, this last year also, don't you? I mean, tell me. In my opinion, this last year also, it's been gotten a lot worse because there's dabblers that are now coming in to do some family law work, as if it's a very simple practice area where you can just jump in and out of. And they're misleading clients, and maybe not intentionally. Maybe they have the best motives in mind. But it ends up costing more money.
Yeah, that dabbler thing is a problem. That probably is one of my biggest pet peeves, because you get that mix of the antagonistic behavior, then you mix it with the I don't know what the F I'm doing. And now you have a whole conflagration because this person who is paying you thousands of dollars, hundreds of dollars an hour, truly believes that you're going to get them whatever it is that you said you're going to get them. No, and you didn't know that whatever you told them, whatever you quoted them, whatever dream you told them was a pipe dream that was never going to happen anyway. Right. And so now this person digs their heels in, they're doubled down because they really believed that you were a truth sayer. And you're a damn lie, you know, and this person has invested thousands, so now they're too invested to let go of the pipe dream that you sold them.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah, I mean, this is a little beyond what we were going to talk about tonight, but I wish there was a course of how to find the right divorce attorney, because most people just don't know. They fall into this trap because, you know, a lot of times a divorce attorney is the only attorney they ever had any exposure to,
Right.
maybe except for like a real estate attorney when they bought
right.
something. And they don't know that there are red flags that should concern you if you're talking to somebody. You know, like if you go talk to a divorce attorney and they're telling you for certain what's going to happen, run. Because so much of what we do is shades of gray and no one can guarantee anything. But what were we going to say, Stephanie?
No, I was going to say, we talk about that on our show all the time. We always tell people this is a red flag. If they're promising you everything, it's a red flag. If they're giving you any kind of specific certainty about that, it's a red flag. Yeah.
Especially when it comes to something like custody. There is no such thing as it's always going to go this particular way. You know, people automatically say, oh, you know, I'm not going to get custody of my child from the mother unless the mother's a drug addict or this or that. And that's not true. That's so not true. There are plenty of dads out there who have full custody of their children to the exclusion of the mother's ability to say anything about the child's, you know, welfare, let alone, you know, where the child lives. Right. So you just really have to be so careful about people who are giving you absolutes. It's probably a lot of snake oil.
Yeah, it definitely is. And, you know, at its core, I think the best attorneys are just problem solvers. You know, I tell all of my coaching clients, if you go into an attorney's office and they're telling you the only way you can proceed is to go file something with the court, I don't want you to hire that attorney, because particularly if custody is an issue, you know, the second you enter the court system, you may unknowingly create more of a litigious environment than you could have had otherwise. I mean, I mediate almost exclusively now, and it's amazing how many people I get into my office where attorneys have not been involved, and I can resolve their whole case in 3 or 4 hours. And in a way that's fair to both of them too.
Yeah. Look, sometimes attorneys will blow shit up on purpose. Like we were talking about earlier, you know, sometimes attorneys, you know, there's a lot of folks out there who just want to churn a case. They just want to juice a case and squeeze as much juice out of it as they can for themselves. My theory on that is that if I have to do that, then I need to up my game someplace else. I must not be doing that great of a job at running my business if I really have to rely on this 1 or 2 people in order to run my practice. You know, if you have a lawyer who is always available, and this is one of my things, they're always available. They can call you at any time. They can do, maybe their practice ain't going so well. you know, with our practice, and I know Steph runs really similarly, you have to make appointments in order to talk to me. And it's not because I don't want to talk to you. It's because I want to be able to do my job well for not only you, but all of my other clients. If you have an attorney who gets on the phone with you every single time, something is lacking somewhere else. That's the way I feel. And I think I'm right.
You know,
what do you think about that, Stephanie?
Oh, I agree 100%. You know, it's something that takes a little bit getting used to for a client. And in fact, it took getting used to for me because I didn't always run my practice that way. But I was exhausted and I couldn't give my best to a client when I was constantly being interrupted. Then I was going back to do something else. And by the way, whatever that something else was then became more expensive because it took me a few minutes to get back into what I was drafting or whatever. And now I just tell clients that I liken it to, if you're at Target and you're in the customer service line and you've been waiting for 10 people and it's finally your turn and the phone rings and the person that's at the cash register walks away and says, I'll be back in a minute, takes the phone call and then goes and runs onto the floor to get a price check for this person on the phone. How are you feeling? And so I kind of explain it to them that way. And then they, clients now get it. That's why you have to make an appointment. It's not because I don't want to talk to you. It's not, I'm literally not sitting around waiting for the phone to ring. There's something in my day that I'm doing.
That's a great analogy.
It's all about expectations. I see so many attorneys that don't just have that conversation at the very beginning of the case of what to expect with communication. And clients will get very upset if they haven't heard from their attorney in a period of time. But if you tell them, here's what you can expect, you might not hear from me for a week, but don't worry, that doesn't mean anything. It's just expectations. I mean, attorneys don't do enough of it. But I think our discussion right here actually gave some really good pointers for people that are looking for attorneys, that you really should look for somebody who is making it very clear that there's certain things that we can try to get, maybe not get, but that, there's no absolutes. And I think you're both right. If an attorney's available all the time, that's a huge red flag. I mean, I tell the attorneys in my office, even if you're sitting at your desk, eating, Skittles and doing absolutely nothing, if someone calls, you're not available, because we want people to know that there's actually another reason too that I think it's important is you kind of want to have an opportunity to get their file open, to kind of be reminded what the heck's going on, what was the last letter I got, and because you want to be prepared.
Right. Absolutely.
With the court as well. So I used to not do that with the court. I used to take every court call. But now I also have the court leave a message as well, because then I know what the message is. I can get the file, I can prepare. And then usually maybe it only takes one phone call, which is a benefit to the client because I now know what the answer to their question is. Or I could have a staff member make the phone call because they don't really need me. It's a scheduling issue.
Right. If you leave a divorce lawyer's office feeling hella good about your case, like you're gonna win on every single freaking point, that's not that. Don't hire that. Please don't hire that person. You're gonna end up coming to one of us three trying to fix your mess because that person sold you a line of bullshit. So, and that setting expectations is important. It's not that we're trying to limit you. It's that we're trying to represent you efficiently. I mean, Steph and I were talking about this last week where, we have an onboarding process for our clients and we set it forth in a manual. Here's what our office hours are. Here's how you reach us. No, you can't email us. You can only do it on the portal. And some people are like, why can't I email you? Because not only do I not want my email to be blocked up, but I also want to protect your information. So we have a client portal that is password protected. You can upload your documents. I know that there's no virus on them. You know that there's no virus on what I'm going to get you. We also know that your spouse isn't going to hack your email and get it. There's reasons for why we do this stuff.
That's brilliant. I love that. So I want to ask both of you about the environment in which we are with Zoom, how everything's virtual. How has that impacted your practices? I guess we'll start with Stephanie.
So I would tell you in March, I was concerned, just like everybody else. And so I, did a little pivoting and a little more marketing and a little more online. And I invested also in a camera and a light and, certain things to just make sure that I was presenting myself to the court in the best way. I think New Jersey was very good about getting us, and I mean us, the family court up and running pretty quickly. I mean, within a matter of weeks, they were still doing some conferences and all of that. So I actually, my practice has been better since, COVID and doing Zoom courts and everything. I find that Zoom courts and these virtual hearings has really helped my clients bottom line with their counsel fees. So I could go to court and have a 4-hour case management conference, which is probably the average, and where I'm really only spending about 10 or 20 minutes with the judge. But there's the travel time, there's the wait time and all of that. Now I have a half an hour conference or less, and that's all the client has to pay for. So it really is translating, I think, for the better for the clients. And I'm getting more work done. So it's also translating better for my other clients because they're getting serviced better.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Ade?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. First of all, I do not have to see the inside of another courtroom ever. I love Zoom, Teams, Skype, whatever it is that you got me on in order to argue my case, I'm down. And I think I agree with you, Stephanie. Our firms were really nicely positioned to transition over anyway, because of the technology that we use at our firms. And so it was a very easy transition for me to get my staff out of my office, to the point now where I'm now going semi-remote. I was actually on a show with your partner, John, early on, talking about going virtual and taking the practice virtual. And so what does that do? That makes me even more accessible, I think, in terms of providing more speedy and more robust services for our clients. We haven't physically seen any one of our clients in a year. I think my staff may have seen 1 or 2 people, but that was because they were dropping off Christmas presents and my staff just happened to be here. But otherwise, no one who has hired me in this year of COVID can ever say that they met me in person.
Yeah, now you realize that they don't need to come in anymore.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, quite frankly,
and I don't need a 2,000 square foot office.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Well,
mm-hmm.
So our firm, as you guys already know, we did go completely virtual. We're down to a Regis office, like literally one office, and we don't have a small firm. I mean, we have a lot of people that work in the firm. Everyone works from home, and it's working wonderfully. And I really think that goes back to who you hire. There's these days, if you are going to a law firm and they clearly don't know how to use technology, be a little concerned, because the court systems and everything else that are happening these days are very technologically advancing. And if you have an attorney behind the 8 ball who doesn't know how to upload documents, doesn't know how to deal with all of the electronic documents and stuff that we have to look through with divorce now, that's a big problem too.
Yeah.
But this was great. This is a great little discussion about who to hire and who not to hire. I mean, clearly, if you guys are in New Jersey or New York, you've got 2 great attorneys right here that you guys can go hire. But
hey.
yeah, you got some great attorneys here. So in divorce, custody can get very heated. And there are some gender lines that are drawn when it comes to children, particularly younger children, I would say. So I want to talk to you both about the games that you see in custody fights and some of the issues that arise. Now, my coaching clients are all over the country. I have coaching clients in Alaska, North Dakota, Utah, Arizona, everywhere. And what's interesting is I thought that there were states where really it was pro-woman, just because of sort of where they are in the country and just sort of my perception. But what I've realized is that basically every place now in the country is very similar, the way that they approach custody cases. And there is a movement of men getting more and more custody in traditional relationships. And by traditional, what I mean is a father who works a full-time job and a mother that maybe is either stay at home or only works part-time, like that kind of old school traditional role. So I want to talk to you guys a little bit about, let's start with the gender roles. What have you guys seen in your practice as you've been practicing? Has that evolved? And if it's evolved, what have you seen about that evolution? Why don't we start with Ade?
I will tell you that the biggest thing is that you just see a lot more men looking to have custody of their children. That's the biggest thing right there. So many men are understanding that it's not always mommy who gets the baby, and that mommy may not always be the right person to have that child full time. I have seen a huge uptick in that. But I'm going to also tell you what's interesting is that I've also simultaneously seen an uptick of men looking for custody as leverage points when they didn't do that before. When it was women who were using, domestic violence situations, which were feigned and things like that, to try to alienate men from children. I actually see that happening more so now. Thankfully, it's not the norm, but I see an uptick in that. And so it's becoming more prevalent to see men using some of the same tactics that women have used improperly but successfully in order to gain custody.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's because they've been taught by their friends, look, man, don't let this happen to you. If she throws a remote at you, you better go and call DIFUS, which is now DCPMP, 911, ACS, whatever it is, wherever state you are. You better do that so that you have your dossier, because guess what? If she files first, that's who the court hears first, and that's who the court's ear is going to be biased towards.
Yeah. What about you, Stephanie? What do you think?
I've seen a lot of that as well. And maybe not a lot, but I've seen more of that as well in the last couple of years. What I've also seen is a trend towards where maybe 10 years ago, maybe even less, I'm not sure. Alternate parenting, alternate weekends was the norm. So for a dad was supposed to get every other weekend plus a dinner visit was pretty standard. And that was just accepted. If you were arguing for more than that, even arguing for like a Friday to a Monday, like you're pushing it. And if you get that, you should just be grateful as a dad and accept it. And I've seen a trend now where that's not the norm anymore. Judges are moving more towards a 50-50 shared schedule if they can. And they're really leaning towards, having a more fair resolution. And I say fair because, having your kid every other weekend and one dinner visit it's not a lot of time that you're having. And men were supposed to accept it, and men did accept it. But there's a lot more pushback now, and there's a lot more understanding that you need both parents in your life.
Yeah, and there's a lot of men out there, to be frank, that think that that's just what's going to happen to them.
Agreed.
And that's what's really interesting. When I start working with guys, particularly in the planning stages, where they just were told by their wife that the wife wants a divorce, or they've started to recognize that there's a problem that they're not going to be able to fix, they just assume that their wife's going to get custody of the kids because of what we've all been through. But I've seen the same thing. More and more fathers, I think this is generational to some degree too. I don't know which generation we call it, but the guys that were born in like the 1970s that now have younger kids, or even the 80s. They definitely are much more involved parents than, say, dads that were born in the 50s and 60s. Yeah. And so a lot of this might be generational too. So let's look at it from the perspective of your female clients. What has been their perspective on men getting more and more custody? Have you seen them pushing back, or are they starting to just realize that things are changing a little bit more, and the gender roles have changed a little bit? What about you, Stephanie?
I don't see my female clients accepting this change. I see my female clients still believing that they're the mom, they gave birth to these children, and so they get to decide how much time dad gets to have. So that's one of the hard conversations to have sometimes, because I have to explain to them that's not how this is going to work. The two of you are divorcing, the two of you have these children, and the two of you get to share these children. And by the way, your kids get to love both of you. It's just mind blowing to me how many parents, and I see it more in my female clients, unfortunately, that think that the children are supposed to choose them and love them more and want to be with them more. So yeah, I don't see my female clients actually coming around to this mindset that men should have equal parenting time.
I completely agree with you. Completely agree. Now, let me just tell you, I'm a mom of two. Once again, my husband says we're getting a divorce. Listen, boo, I will see you every other weekend, at least for the first few months, because I'm gonna do me. I'm gonna get some mommy time. I'm gonna go to the spa. I'm gonna figure it out because I will have a party. And I have to tell some of my clients, don't you need a break? Did you? Because I don't know whether it's a guilt thing. Like, I'm the mom, I'm supposed to have this level of involvement. And maybe it runs the gamut. Maybe it's a range, because I have some moms who are career oriented, and so they're probably more adaptable, and it's easier for them to step away. But they would be in the minority. They would be in the minority. Most of my female clients are, well, why do they have to have an overnight? Well, but then suppose he has a girlfriend. Okay, well, suppose you have a boyfriend. Well, but they shouldn't see any other mother but me. Nobody can replace me. No, nobody's trying to replace you. People have a right to move on with their lives and have other people involved in their lives that may just be involved with your child. So long as that person loves your child and treats your child with respect and doesn't cross the lines with respect to disciplining your child, then that shouldn't be an issue. But I find that women sometimes are more, they're more like the possessors of the children instead of being the parent. No, the child needs to be with me. Why? Because I'm mom. I'm the only one who can take them to the dentist. I'm the only one who has their immunization record. Well, we're going to have to change that dynamic then, right? This child has a right to a loving relationship with his or her father. And I'll tell you, recently I had to tell a mother, he's going to get overnights because he's entitled to overnights. Is there something going on at the house? Is there something that I need to know? And that she couldn't articulate for me anything except for this I'm entitled type mindset. And I'll tell you, that kind of mindset is the type of mindset that will easily cause a mother to lose custody of her kids. If that's what's going to pervade, her legal strategy for getting custody, that could be derailed very easily.
Right. You mentioned changing the dynamic, and I think it's really important for dads, this is before a divorce is getting filed. This is when you're thinking things aren't going great, to take a more active role in the parenting of your kids. So mothers tend, this is just a generalization, but they tend to be the ones who are going, I'm going to give, Johnny a bath. I'm going to do all of these things. I'm going to back to school night. And, sometimes it's easy to say, oh, thank goodness, I'm exhausted. I don't have to go and do that. Well, that's okay when you're an intact family, but right. When it looks like you're going to be separating, you need to make sure you're going to back to school night, you're going to doctor's appointments, you're doing all of these things. Little Sally's best friend across the street's name is Erica, and that the doctor's visit the last time she went was 3 months ago, and that back to school night, she had a stellar mark here, and then she could, you need to know these things so that way when you're in a position that you have to go through an actual separation or custody fight, you can say, I am absolutely 100% involved in my child's life, and there's no reason why I shouldn't, have an equal access to my child.
Absolutely. Do not come up into court trying to get custody of your kid and you don't even know what bedtime story they like to read. You don't even know what time they go to bed or where their school is. Please don't do it. Sir, I'm going to tell you that you're probably not going to get custody of your child. I probably will give you that absolute, unless you give me a whole lot of other bullshit about mom, which clearly indicates that she's a fraud, not right for these kids, right? Unless you give me all of that, if you don't even know that your kid likes his lovey before he goes to bed, you're going to have problems. Nobody's going to understand that you're really trying to seek this custody arrangement for the best interest of your child. Don't come off like that guy who's really just trying to get custody so that they can eliminate or reduce their child support obligation.
That's
Don't come off
exactly
like
what I was
that.
going to say. I think that when you come into court like that and you don't know anything about your child or very little about your child's habits, and by the way, your ex is going to pull the most obscure thing they can possibly think of because they don't want you to know it. They don't want you to know that answer to that question. So they're going to try to pull these things. And if you're the one that looks like you're just there for reducing child support, the judge is going to look at that. And say, do they really want this relationship? Is this really in the best interest of this child? Because they don't even know their doctor's name. They don't. I had a case. They didn't. A parent, and it wasn't. It was actually the opposite situation. It was the mom didn't know that their child was allergic to something. I forget what it was, but there was an allergy. And dad said, how about this? And it was like a trick question. And mom was like, that's fine. Oh, she's allergic to that.
Wow. Yeah.
It's you guys, one of the main things that I do with men is talk to them about what I consider to be common sense things about what they need to know. I have an entire course just teaching them the things that you guys were just talking about. I have like spreadsheets of go through, list your child's top 5 favorite friends. Mm-hmm. And then, who are they having a fight with? What is their favorite thing to go do outside? What's their favorite video game? When's the last time they went to the dentist, the doctor? And it's even beyond all of that. Women are a lot better about organization of their children's lives, keeping calendars and all those sorts of things. And that is something that most men just don't ever do. Mm-hmm. And so that's another thing that I advocate for all of my male clients to really go out and get a calendar and start putting everything on it, including keeping records of what's going on,
Absolutely.
And it's just, as an attorney, I always tell people, listen, here's what's going to help you when you go to an attorney. When you can say, look, here's all this information that I have. The attorney's just going to sit up in their chair and get all happy because you basically have it all laid out. And people just aren't doing that enough, particularly men. But I think you touched on something, Stephanie, in terms of the behaviors that people have pre-divorce. And it's really the thing that I find the most entertaining about people's arguments in divorce, which is you've got someone that maybe has a drinking problem or does some drugs, marijuana or something. And they've been doing it for a long time. And now you're getting divorced. And now all of a sudden, that's a reason why the other person shouldn't have custody or shouldn't have overnights or shouldn't have this, should not have that. So I want to hear from both of you how you deal with this situation, because I find it to be comical the way some attorneys use this information. We'll start with you, Ade.
I do find it to be comical, especially when you represent. What'd you say?
I said it depends on who I represent.
It depends, but listen, if both of y'all, because I'm from Brooklyn, right? If both of y'all was sitting there in the garage smoking spliffs, what are we talking about? What are we doing right now? What are you saying? Okay, you are the one that went and got the ganja down the street, and we just, y'all just smoked it together while the kids were sleeping, and you were in the garage. What are you doing? Now, all of a sudden, because she's been clean for a few months, we're going to come and talk about, but dad does, dad smokes weed. What? But here's the biggest deal. First of all, don't lie to your lawyers, because what you're going to get if you do that with me is you're going to get an ex-lawyer. I had somebody do that, and the drug was actually cocaine, which is a whole other situation. I had somebody do that, and I actually was in a situation where I had custody. The court was down, convinced, until my client came in one day with his whole head bicked, and wife over there alleged that he was doing coke, and he had to take me to the side with his mommy and say, yeah, so by the way, I didn't tell you this, but I did do cocaine on Okay, so now we're like coward and we're talking about all of this and I'm in court and I was on my A game and we were going home with your kids and now I'm hearing what? Please tell your lawyer the absolute truth. We've heard so much. We are not going to judge you. I don't really think there's very much that we can judge people on at all at this point in our careers. But you got to tell the truth. And so, and if it's that you both did something, you need to tell me so that I know how to craft my arguments. Mm-hmm. Don't have it be that I'm blindsided by all of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What about you, Stephanie?
I've been in court multiple times where my client swears up and down, never did anything, absolutely not. Are you sure? Because they're going to ask for you to take a test today. Like when we're in there, this is what's going to happen. Absolutely not. I'm going to be negative. Of course, they walk out of the courtroom. They come back an hour, the test comes back an hour later, positive. Well, it was just that, last week. Hello, how many times did I ask you, are you sure? Because by the way, we can just save everybody a whole lot of time and then explain it. Especially now in this day and age, and not necessarily cocaine, but, marijuana and drinking. It's not as, it's not as terrible as it might have been 10 years ago where you would come in and jump up and down and say this person's tested, is on drugs. They've been doing marijuana in the bathroom and they, whatever. No, you just explain it and we can craft our arguments, or we can do something to rehabilitate you before we go in and make those arguments. Right. We can decide that together, and it's very fact sensitive.
Well, how does it impact the children? I mean, that's always the question.
Correct.
Whatever it is, how does it impact the children? I mean, are you smoking a joint and having a couple beers and then getting the kids in the car? Or do you go down to your basement after they go to sleep at night and do it? I mean, the reason I find it comical, and I've had this exact conversation with people where they'll tell me, my husband, gets drunk all the time, is doing drugs. My first question always is, so naturally while you guys were married, you never left the kids home alone with him, right? And I get the deer in the headlights.
Right.
Well, yeah. Really? You left them alone with this horrible person who's just, we can't have any unsupervised parenting time now? Really? And that's what I almost have to laugh when I hear that, because I'm like, do you know how ridiculous that sounds?
Mm-hmm. And you know what? It's the same for men who have left the house and left their kids with the horrible mom. Mm-hmm. So you're coming into me right now and you're telling me that she is the baddest thing out there, right? And you have been out of the house for 2 months. And so where are the kids? The kids are with you, right? Oh no, the kids are there. Okay, so you expect me to convince the court that homegirl is so nasty, so vile, she can't possibly take care of your kids, but the kids have been there for the last 2 months. And you didn't do anything to get your kids out of there? Seriously? No, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. I mean, I had a case where my client said to me, well, the wife is an alcoholic. So I'm like, well, we need to do something. We need to go. No, I don't really have the money to do that right now. So I guess I'm just going to stick with, whatever the court gives me for custody, and I'll probably try to deal with it later. Well, later came, right? Because wife was really a mess. So later came. And then he played the same card. I don't have the money to deal with this. Look, if you are not the person who, if you're going to be the plaintiff and your spouse isn't running to court, you might want to wait until you get up some kind of, reserves to file your case and do it properly. Don't leave your kids out there to sink because you didn't get your coin right in order to bring the case that you needed to bring to save them.
And by the way, if that is the case and you let 6 months, a year go by knowing this person has serious issues or, quasi serious issues, and then you come in a year later and say, I want to change custody because this person's an alcoholic, and you've known about it for a year, where's the change of circumstances based on what you had before?
Correct.
Absent any something happening to the children, which nobody wants. But I mean, absent that, you really have to consider what's going on with the kids and how safe are they at the time. And like you said, prepare in advance. Don't do it piecemeal. Don't file and then let the kids
try to figure it out later. Yeah,
Right.
that's not a thing. I mean, it could be your thing, but you're not going to be happy with the result.
It is a thing, but not a successful thing.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, once you figure out someone's motivation for why they're saying what they're saying, it says a lot. I don't know. I could never be a judge, because if someone came into me with exactly what you just said, Stephanie, where it's been going on for 6 months or 12 months, and it's so horrible that the kids need to be taken away, I think I would be rolling my eyes, and I don't think I could hold my eyes down from rolling, because really, I mean, it's crazy.
But then you know what, John? You know what, John? I would also be that judge who's like, well, maybe the kids don't need to be with either one of you. maybe they don't need to be with either one of you, because you're over here, doing the most, partying with the kids in the crib. And you're over here acting like this never happened. So obviously I need a third party to take these kids.
And you know what? By the way, just because you're talking about partying, and when you separate, you might have been married for a long time and you want to get out there and have your little fun for a little bit. And this is great because she wants the kids. And now I'm just going to, sow my oats for a little bit. The time that passes after you've separated, you're now creating a status quo for what parenting time might look like. So, don't forget that you need to make sure that you're still going to those same, back to school nights. You're still trying to be involved in the doctor's appointments. You're doing all of that stuff. So, and keeping a calendar of everything that you're doing, keeping a calendar of all the times that you're seeing your kids, keeping a calendar of all the times that she's not letting you see the kids when you want to, because that's also important when you're looking at custody and parenting time. So when you go into the judge, you actually have a document that you could present instead of saying a random argument that, she keeps the kids from me, or, yes, we separated, but it wasn't me partying. It was actually that she didn't let me see the kids as much as I wanted to, because you could show the calendar with specific dates.
Absolutely. So you've just given some advice to men before divorce, but I actually want to ask you guys a little bit more directly. If you could get your male clients where custody was going to be an issue, like 6 months before the divorce started, and give them advice about specific things that they could do that could enhance their ability to make arguments for 50-50 time, or at least significant parenting time with the kids, what kind of advice would you give to that male client? We'll start with Adele.
So here's the deal.
Adele.
You can call, as long as you call me paid, I'm good.
You know what, it's that L after the E.
John, we're people now, so you can call me Ade. Just call me Ade. You know you want to.
I cannot stop looking at your hair. I love that color.
Thank you. Oh, but I don't know if you can see my scales of justice. Can you see it?
Oh, I didn't see those.
Oh, that looks awesome.
You have a badass outlet. I'm a badass.
I gotta tell you, I liked your hair on your website picture too.
Thank you. I have some pink going on. I think it was some rose gold or something. I'm different. I like to be different.
Well, it would definitely be easy to find you in the court. Do you tell your clients, here's the color hair I've got going on right now. Just look for me.
Green hair, yellow hair, whatever it is. But
so what advice would you give a guy 6 months before their divorce? If you could, that way you could help them mold their life a little bit. That would give you an easier chance to get them what they're looking for.
Stephanie and I just talked about something similar to what I'm going to say today on our show. Keep it single, guys. Do not go out and find the quote unquote love of your life when you are starting to head towards divorce. And if you have to have a relationship, don't put it on blast on Facebook. Nobody needs to know that you were in Cancun with your boo. We don't need to see what you bought your boo. We don't need to see any of that, because what that's going to do is it's going to rile up the Mrs. over there, who really isn't emotionally done with you and doesn't want you to be emotionally done with her. And so now the divorce gets even more cantankerous. Now the divorce gets even more, rambunctious, because she's turning up the heat. since you now think that you have the audacity to find happiness someplace else. Don't do it. Stay single, or at least make it look like you're single. Anyway, don't make commitments to other people. That's a big thing. And also it's big not only because of how it impacts your soon-to-be ex-wife's behavior, but also you don't want your new person to be so involved, right, Stephanie, with how your result turns out here, because it's going to cause you to do things and cut corners where you may not ordinarily have done so.
Yeah.
That's a dangerous situation to be in.
Think with your big brain, not your little brain.
Don't think with that PP. Don't think with the PP.
Put that in quotation marks and put it on your website. That's great. It's so wonderful. I think that is such excellent advice. I mean, just you cannot rub that in the face of the person you're divorcing, the husband or wife. It doesn't matter. You just cannot rub that. And keep the kids away from if you're going to date somebody, the kids should really not know that it's going on. I mean, there's nothing worse for a kid when mom and dad's marriage is ending, but dad's bringing this new woman around. I mean, how do you think the kids are going to look at you, dad? I mean, come on. Yeah. All they're going to say is, that's why mom and dad are getting divorced, because dad's off with this new woman.
Yes, it's her fault. Yes, you don't want that. I mean, it's already hard enough for the kids, and they're already going to try to figure out in their heads. Stephanie and I are both products of divorce, so they're already going to try to figure out in their heads, well, who was the bad guy here? Don't let it be that the kids can peg you as the bad guy, because in the state of New York, kids always get attorneys in these cases, and now, depending upon how old your kid is, the only thing that attorney is going to be doing is literally regurgitating everything your kid says, which may be based in falsehoods. So don't have it be that the kid can say, and then my dad cheated on my mom, and now here we go, and then he brought her in, and now I had to go over to their house, and she made cabbage, and I don't even like cabbage. She knows I don't like cabbage, and all of this nonsense. So, don't let it be, because kids, especially in New York, kids can get really empowered. And that's a bad situation when you have a kid who's not in a situation where they're so young that substituted judgment is going to be used, and their attorney is just going to do what they think is best for them. When you have a kid who knows that they have the ear of an attorney who's just going to rah fight for them, that could really mess up your case.
Yeah. That's horrible. What about you, Stephanie? What advice would you give a man like 6 months pre-divorce?
I would, like what we already talked about with the calendar. I think that that's really important. And even if you're not separated yet, I think keeping a calendar so you actually know day to day what's going on. Because you're not going to remember necessarily like the little things that happened where the child was kept from you, where you made an effort to do something and you weren't allowed to do it. The back to school nights, you want to make a note that you went to that, because that is all helpful. When you come into my office, if you had this calendar and said, this is why I want custody and here's all my involvement with my kids, and you handed me this notebook, I would be like, yes, you're amazing. Also, I think you should go on and you should scrub your social media. I think you should take a good look at your social media, see what you've posted throughout, what kind of image you're going to portray. I've very successfully used social media to get people kicked out of their houses, to, get a leg up with custody, regarding equitable distribution, where people said they didn't have something that they did. These vacations to Cancun, when you say you have no money to pay support, yet you're going and you're taking your girlfriend on, and your girlfriend's coming on and she's like, look at this. And, so yes, go through, scrub your social media, delete people that you think that you don't, are going to be reporting back in, your other person's ear.
I would just say more basically, stay off of social media, period. Because you're very likely to write something dumb. Late one night.
Little drunk Facebook posts in the middle of the night that stay up for hours until like 8 o'clock in the morning, when you're back up and you're like, oops, delete. It's already out there.
Yes. Did I really put that up there? Somebody sent me a Facebook post that their ex-husband put up just trashing her, talking about how she keeps him away from her kids, from their kids, and, you know, she's going to pay and all of this stuff. Look, I don't even know what the truth is of that situation. But what I do know is that as soon as she's taking all kinds of screenshots, as soon as she's filing for some kind of change of custody, that joint is going to be right in the motion papers. And a judge like me would be like, "Ooh, really?" You know, there's some judges who really love the drama, and they will. I can think of a few of them, and it will really blow up your spot if you try to do stuff like that. Yeah, just stay off. John is right. Just stay off the Zag on social media. You can't control yourself.
Go on it. And it's funny, Stephanie. I obviously agree with your advice about the calendar, but I always like to tell people why they need to do stuff and not just do it. And the why, it is for the reason you just said, so that you can prove that you were an involved parent. But it's also so that you know what's going on in your child's life so that they can see how involved you are. Mm-hmm. And I think people get so caught up in proving themselves that they forget that they really want to build the bond with their kid. They want their kid to know that, you know, that dad knows that I have a soccer game today. Dad knows that I have a birthday party on Saturday. Dad knows that I have homework that I needed to do. And when your kid recognizes that you're just as involved as mom, then when divorce time comes, your kid wants to be around you more because you've been active. And I think a lot of guys just miss that. Because again, they make it about them and their soon-to-be ex-spouse and not about the kids.
Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. You have to keep your kids at the center of your divorce. And Stephanie and I say that all the time, you know, and then we just said it today. Once your kids are good and everything's fine with your kids, you then have to treat it as a business arrangement. You are getting divorced. A marriage is a contract, and take some, if to the extent that you can, take some of the emotion out of it and treat it as a business arrangement. Not that you should be robotic, but you should be very logical, which is something that men are very good at doing. Being logical about what it is that you're doing and why.
And by the way, and I, you know, maybe it's not so much for men because I don't see it as much in my male clients, but you really need, when you're saying put your kids in the forefront, that's great advice. But that also means that you should not be discussing litigation, divorce, you know, how bad you hate your wife right now. Like any of those things, keep those away from the kids, because by the way, when they're okay and they think that the divorce process is going fine, like they know they're separate, you know, their parents are separating. If they understand that their parents are going to be fine, then the kids will be fine.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. You know, having kids who are unstable because they're not sure as to which parent actually has their back over the other, it's not a good position to put your kids in. Or having kids choose, do you want to live with me or do you want to live with no, look, there are professionals who are able to talk to your kids in ways that get that information without even asking those questions directly. And they're trained to do that. Don't have it be that you are the one who's asking those questions. Oh, and here's another thing. Don't record everything that you do with your kids, say to your kid. Don't record your children all the time. There's people who do that. I have tons of recordings of them. How many of these recordings do you really think I'm going to get into evidence? And it starts to make you look a little creepy. You know, conversations that you have with your ex may need to be recorded for various reasons, but recording the kids, yeah, that's usually off limits unless there's something really egregious going on that this kid is telling you.
I haven't had it in a while. Yeah, I mean, I haven't had it in a while, but I do know I had a couple cases. For some reason, they come like in ebbs and flows. So I had like several cases at the same time where the parents were asking certain questions and they were recording the conversation. Well, didn't mommy say this or that? And like very leading these kids and then bringing these to my office and saying, see, I told you this person was terrible. I told you this. I'm like, no, not using that at all. Do you not hear what you're saying to your children? Because that's more damaging.
Because it's about winning for most of these people. It's about winning. Well, this has been a fascinating conversation, guys. I think we could probably talk about this all night. There's so much more, but I hope that everyone learned a little something. Listen to the two of you. You both are so brilliant and have such a good sort of way about how you're advising your clients. So I'm going to put your contact information in the comments and in the show notes. So if anyone lives in New York City and I guess New Jersey a day, you can represent them. Is that right?
Yep, Staten Island, and I also represent people in Monmouth County, but usually with the Staten Island connection, Monmouth and Middlesex with the Staten Island connection. Otherwise, I send them over to my girl, Stephanie.
Yep, but
So it has to be something special for you to go over the bridge, huh?
Well, I live in Jersey, so I'm a Jersey girl now.
Going the other direction. How about that? And what about you, Stephanie? What counties are you practicing in these days?
Monmouth, Ocean, Middlesex, and Mercer. But lately, since everything is Zoom, I actually have a few cases. I have like Jersey City. I have a few other cases up there, which I normally wouldn't take, but now I can. So.
Wonderful. So everyone listening in New York and New Jersey, you got yourself two great attorneys. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. I hope everyone learned a little something, and we'll see you next time.